Do you want to give pastels a try but you feel a bit undecided? But why should you try pastels? Let me tell you, because they are amazing. In this video I'm going to go through everything you need to know about pastels, from the different types of pastels, the best paper and blending tools, all the way to a full Dalmatian eye demo with that beautiful liver brown fur around it. If you'd like to watch the real-time version of this drawing with every stroke, layer and blending step explained in full detail, you can find it on my Patreon page. We'll also go over how to avoid the most common beginner mistakes, so your first pastel drawings turn out great. And now, all of that being said, let's just get started. But what are pastels? A pastel is an art medium made from powdered pigment and a binder formed into sticks or pencils. You can also find them as pure powder, known as pen pastels, which are highly concentrated and can even be mixed like paint. Types of pastels. The most popular ones come into stick forms, and there are two main types. Soft pastels, which are rich in pigment and very smooth. Even the lightest pressure gives wide, even coverage. And hard pastels, which contain more binder and feel scratchier, giving more control and less coverage per stroke. Hard pastels might sound like a disadvantage, but actually they help prevent overloading your paper with pigment, keeping it strong for more layers later. Pastel pencils. Many artists prefer pastel pencils for more precision. They are perfect for fine details such as fur, hair or fabric. Some of my favorites are Caran d'Ache, soft and ideal for highlights and finishing touches. Faber-Castell Pit. They are harder and perfect for crisp, tiny details. And Stabilo Carbotello, which are right in between, not too soft, neither too hard. But keep in mind that pastel pencils can get very expensive, so just start with one or two brands and see if they work for you. And my advice is to start secondhand, so just look around what people sell related to pastel pencils and just buy one small or two small sets of pastel pencils secondhand because they are cheaper, and see if that really works for you. Pen pastels. Pen pastels are the newest type. They are a pure powdery pastel stored in a flat pan. They are easy to mix, to apply and to blend. The best way to use them is with soft tools, which are made from a special micropore sponge that's reusable, easy to clean and great for smooth coverage. If you only buy a few basic colors, you can mix almost everything. No need for a giant expensive set. Just remember, always mix your colors on a separate sheet first, not directly on your artwork. Now let's see how to store pen pastels. When it comes to storage, my favorite way is the tower method, which is also the best one, and the best part, it's free. Just remove the lids and screw one pen over another until you reach the height you want. This method keeps everything organized, easy to grab and compact. Now let's have a look at best papers to use. After trying so many brands, my favorite one is this one, which is the Clairefontaine Pastel Mat. It's a premium card surface made out of cellulose fibers, giving it a velvety texture that grabs and holds even the softest pastel layers very beautifully. You can get it in several sizes. Pads of 12 sheets with the sizes from 8 to 24 cm, 24 with 30 cm or 30 with 40 cm. I don't have the smallest size, but I do have the other two. You can also purchase them in individual sheets up to 70 with 100 cm, which is a very large size. It's really worth every penny if you want rich layering and a very vibrant blending. Sharpening pastel pencils. If you ask a pastel artist what's the most frustrating thing about pastels, most of them will say that it's sharpening the pencils. We all know how fragile and prone to breakage the pastel pencils are. It does seem like a disaster waiting to happen, but don't worry. I'm going to show you some great methods that are going to deliver a great result. Let's go through them one by one. The first one is a manual sharpener. Using a manual sharpener is the easiest and fastest way to sharpen pastel pencils. All you have to do is to insert the pencil and twist the handle gently. At the end, you'll get a very sharp tip ready to create the finest details. To avoid blunting the blade too quickly, sharpen a regular graphite pencil from time to time. This simple trick cleans the blade, removes any pigment buildup, and keeps it sharper longer. Manual sharpeners are perfect for a quick touch-up or if you need a very clean and uniform pencil tip. Method number 2 is using an utility knife and a sandpaper pad. This is the most common method among the professional pastel artists and the one that gives you the most control over the pencil. Here's how to do it safely. Hold the pencil firmly in one hand and use an X-Acto or utility knife in the other. Gently begin to remove the wood casing around the pastel core, but don't press too hard or you might break the tip or chip the lid. It's better to shave away small bits at a time than to rush and risk damage. You can choose how much of the core to expose, but remember, the more you expose, the more fragile it becomes. Once you are done shaping it, grab a sandpaper pad to refine the tip. This is a special tool made for sharpening pencil lids and it's great for shaping the pencil tip without breaking it. Start gently rubbing the pencil tip against the sandpaper pad in one direction until you reach the desired sharpness. If you want a very fine, needle-like tip, focus on turning the pencil as you sand it. The result is a precise, clean point, perfect for drawing fur, hair, or very delicate highlights. Always remember, when handling sharp tools, just take your time. I know you want very pointy tips on your pastel pencils, but your safety always comes up first. Both of these methods deliver a great result, but it depends on what you want from your pastel pencil. And if you alternate between these two methods, you'll extend the lifespan of both your pencils and your tools. Blending pastels. These are the three main blending methods I use the most for my pastel artworks. The first one is blending with a nitrile glove. I wear a nitrile glove to avoid transferring oils from my skin onto the paper. It also helps to control pressure and keeps my fingers clean. I usually use my ring finger to blend since it gives a gentle, precise touch. When switching colors, I wipe the glove on a microfiber cloth to avoid muddying the colors. The second method is using blending stamps. This is perfect for pushing pigment into the paper's texture while keeping the edges very crisp. They give a great control and you can clean them very easily with a microfiber cloth. And the last one is the soft tools. To use the soft tools, just use gentle circular motions to spread the color evenly over the paper and fill in the paper's texture. If the sponge got stained with a lot of darker colors, just keep it for similar tones. Don't throw it away because it's still reusable. Because I couldn't make a pastel tutorial without a demonstration, I wanted to draw something to show you how a piece comes together in pastel. Of course, I won't be able to apply every single thing mentioned earlier in this video, but this will give you a clear idea of how the techniques work together in a real drawing, so I chose to create this Dalmatian eye. Now let's jump into the base colors and the background. I started with a small background area, laying down a soft gradient that goes from light to dark brown. I was really inspired by fall, those warm tones when the leaves start turning brown, so I wanted to bring a bit of that feeling into this piece. Then I moved on to the Dalmatian's fur. I began with the white coat using a soft white pastel, keeping the pressure really light and building it up slowly in thin layers. You don't want to press too hard or fill up the paper's texture too soon. That texture helps later when we add more layers. I used a nitrile glove and soft tools to blend it out gently. It gives such a smooth, natural look. After that, I started working on the Dalmatian's patches, those brownish liver spots. I added a liver brown base layer there, again blending softly with my glove and soft tools. Base layers are super important. They are basically the foundation of your whole piece. They set up the tones, help the colors blend better later, and give you a clear direction for lighting and shading. And the key is to take your time, keep your layers light, and don't overblend. Let the paper breathe. Around the eye, I switched to a pinkish color on the outside to bring in some warmth and a natural transition from the white fur to the eye. Then, inside of the eye, I added a few shades of brown to start building up depth and a bit of that soft, realistic look. I used an eyeshadow sponge here because it gives me more control in those tiny spaces. It's small, flexible, and helps me blend really smoothly without overdoing it. You don't need fancy tools for this. Even makeup sponges work great for delicate blending like this. This step is important because the eyes are such a focal point. Even at this base stage, I want to make sure the tones feel balanced and the shapes are made correctly. So I keep checking how pinks and browns blend into the surrounding fur, making sure everything transitions naturally. It's subtle work, but it really sets up the detail we'll add later on. Once those base colors are in place, you can already see the drawing starting to come to life. And that's when it really gets exciting. Alright, now we're getting into one of my favorite parts, adding details to the eye using pastel pencils. I pay close attention to the pupil and the highlights. These are two things that are everything when it comes to making an eye look alive. For the highlights, I use a strong, clean white pencil, and for the pupil, I go in with a dark, rich black pencil. That strong contrast between the deep blacks and the crisp whites instantly gives the eye that sparkle and depth. I start by building up that bright brown orangey tone of the iris. This is really where the whole piece starts to come to life. When I'm layering this color, I focus on keeping the transition smooth so it still feels realistic and not flat. Let's not forget about the white of the eye. It's never truly white. I add a touch of gray here to tone it down and make it look more natural. Leaving it completely white can make the eye look fake or too harsh, so that soft gray helps it blend in with the rest of the face and the eye. Around the eye, I add some flashy pink tones, but being careful not to use very bright pinks to avoid the eye looking irritated. This helps tie it in naturally with the surrounding skin and fur, adding a little warmth and softness around the edges. Then I start drawing in a few lashes that overlap the eye. These small details adds a lot of realism. It breaks up the smooth surface and makes the eye feel like it's actually sitting in space rather than being flat on the paper. This stage is all about observation and balance. Keep your pencil sharp, use a light touch, and don't rush. Every tiny line and highlight adds up, and that's what gives your artwork that lifelike, expressive look. Now that the base layers and the eye are done, it's time to really bring the Dalmatian's fur to life. For most of this stage, I'm using a very strong white pastel pencil. I actually use it for the majority of the drawing. I like to rotate the pencil every now and then to keep the tip sharp. That's super important when you want crisp, clean fur strokes. I also vary my pressure depending on the brightness of the area. Where the fur catches more light, of course I need to press a bit harder, and where it's in the shadow, I lighten my touch, so I press lighter. That small change in pressure really helps to create depth and dimension. One of the biggest keys to make the fur look realistic is creating the illusion that the white fur is sitting on top of the darker patches, like it overlaps them naturally. So if you're drawing a Dalmatian, this tip is very important, and please keep it in mind when you're drawing a Dalmatian. The secret is to use soft, confident strokes, one clean motion per strand of fur. If you go back and forth too much, you'll start dragging pigment from the darker spots into the white areas, and that can muddy everything up. After a few strokes, I always wipe the tip of the pencil on a microfiber cloth to remove any brown or dark pigments. It keeps the whites clean and bright. In the darker areas, I also mix in some strokes of liver brown, dark brown, and Payne's gray. This adds contrast and depth, making the fur look fuller and more realistic. At the top of the head, where it meets the background, I soften that edge a little by adding a few loose strands of hairs. I'm careful not to overdo it, just enough to make the transition feel natural. Sharp edges in that area can make the head look cut out of the background, but to fix this problem, I just used a few quick, soft strokes so everything blends together beautifully. It is a small step, but it adds so much value to the final look of the artwork. Around the eye area, I even add a few light pink strands of fur. This might sound unexpected, but it adds a very nice variety of color and warmth. Even though we think that the Dalmatians are just black and white fur, probably thanks to the famous cartoon we all know, but when we look closely, their fur actually has subtle shades of pinks, browns and grays. Another thing to keep in mind is that the base layers underneath the white fur aren't completely white. And that's a good thing because it's a little darker and the white pencil strokes on top really pop. This contrast helps your details stand out and give that crisp, realistic texture. And that's why a solid base layer is so important. When it's done well, it makes adding details so much easier and gives your drawing that polished, professional finish. Now let's talk about mistakes that every pastel beginner makes. And let's not forget how to avoid them. Mistake number 1 is not starting with a sketch or at least guidelines. As in real life, you should always have a plan when starting something new. And talking about art, that plan is a sketch or some guidelines. A well-done sketch is essential. It helps to establish composition, shapes, and proportions before applying any kind of pigment. If you skip this step, you likely face problems later on that are much harder to fix once all the pastel is already down on the paper. Mistake number 2 is choosing the wrong paper or paper type. Before starting your drawing, always examine your subject very clearly and choose a paper that's matching the general tone of your artwork. But just as important, before all of that, just make sure you're using a paper that's specifically made for pastels. Regular drawing or printing paper won't hold the pigment properly and you'll struggle to build layers and the colors will look dull and patchy. A pastel surface like pastel matte or sanded paper grips the pigment much better and keeps your work more vibrant. Mistake number 3 is pressing too hard. If you are used to color pencils, this might be a habit. With pastels, even the lightest pressure is visible on the paper. Pressing too hard not only fills in the paper's texture too quickly, but also increases the risk of breaking your pencil tips. Over time, you'll develop the reflex to apply just the right amount of pressure. But at first, focus on being gentle. Mistake number 4 is adding too many layers. Every paper, even pastel paper, has its limit. The more pigment you add, the faster the tube fills up. When that happens, the pastel starts to slide or scratch instead of blending, and that's a clear sign that the paper can't take any more layers. Lots of texture always means lots of room for the pigment to sit, but once it's full, any new pastel will just move around on the surface rather than stick to it. It's better to build up slowly and deliberately than to overload it early on. Mistake number 5 is not selecting colors beforehand. This is a huge time saver. If you pick colors as you go, you'll constantly interrupt your workflow, and your drawing may lose color consistency. Always take a moment to select your palette beforehand. Lay out the pencil or sticks you plan to use so you can easily maintain harmony and reference your color choices throughout the process. It's a small step that makes a huge difference, especially when matching colors to a reference photo. Mistake number 6 is not taping the paper down, especially if your art studio has a lot of humidity. Not taping the paper down, especially if your art room has a lot of humidity, can cause the paper to get wavy or curl as you work. Always tape your pastel paper securely to your drawing board before starting. Some types of pastel paper, like pastel matte, can curl slightly in the corners as you work. That's why taping keeps everything flat. It also creates a neat, crisp border when you remove the tape at the end of your artwork. And remember, never use regular Scotch tape because it will tear the paper when you remove it. Instead, use masking tape or craft tape which peels off safely. Mistake number 7 is using cheap pastel paper. A low quality paper can ruin your results because pastels won't grip and the layers will be impossible to build up. Invest in a good quality pastel paper like Pastel Mat, even if you just buy a few sheets, but at least you start from somewhere using a very good quality paper and avoid a lot of frustrations. Mistake number 8 is buying a giant pastel pencil or soft pastel set. When you're just starting out using pastels, it's easy to think that more colors result into a better quality artwork, right? I've been there also. But that's not really the case. If you buy a giant set, like a set of 72 pastel pencils, for example, from Stabilo Carbotello, you're going to get overwhelmed by all the colors and it's not going to do you any good. Instead, start with a smaller set and focus on color mixing and layering. This will help you develop a strong understanding of color theory and tonal balance while keeping your workspace and mind organized. Mistake number 9 is skipping the base layers and jumping directly into the details. This is one of the most common mistakes that a lot of pastel beginners do and that I was guilty of as well when I started out using pastels. Many beginners just rush into adding details as fast as possible without thinking that a base layer is important. You just have to take your time and create the base layers first and just then go to the details because that's going to make your work much easier and it's going to deliver a better result also. Those base layers are actually the foundation of your drawing. They fill in the paper's texture, establish values, and make adding details on top so much easier. When you do this right, the rest of the process becomes smoother and faster, and your finished drawing looks more cohesive and polished. Just take your time and build those base layers gradually. You'll get a much better end result for sure. And mistake number 10, and the last one, is not cleaning your tools or fingers between colors. It's easy to forget this when you're focused, but dirty tools can quickly muddy up your colors. Wipe your fingers, blending stumps, and soft tools regularly on a microfiber cloth to keep your colors always clean and fresh. Even if you use a nitrile glove, you also have to do the same because that also can muddy up your colors. Pastels are vibrant, fast, and surprisingly forgiving. From soft, smooth blending with pan pastels to adding crisp and fine details with pastel pencils, they offer endless creative possibilities. And if you'd like to see this entire Dalmatian eye tutorial in real time, with every step included from start to finish, you can find it on my Patreon. If you enjoyed this pastel beginner guide, please don't forget to subscribe, to like this video, and hit that bell button so you don't miss any of my further videos. Also, please let me know in the comments below what do you think about my video and if it helped you or not. Thank you so much for watching and I'm going to see you in my next videos as well. Have a nice day everyone.